The nation mourns the loss of India's titan Ratan Tata. Wrapped in the Indian tricolor, his mortal remains reach Worli crematorium. Union Home Minister Amit Shah and other dignitaries continue to pay their last respects at the NCPA in South Mumbai. Those are the visuals of Home Minister Amit Shah, who's come to pay respects to Ratan Tata. The government of Maharashtra and Gujarat have declared state mourning. There you see Kumaramangalam Birla on the screen. Ratan Tata, credited with transforming the Tata Group into a globally renowned conglomerate, passed away at the age of 86. He had been in the intensive care unit of a hospital in Mumbai, where his condition was described as critical. Prime Minister Modi and President Draupadi Murmu led the nation in paying tribute to the late chairperson emeritus of the Tata Group. Ratan Tata shaped lives and revolutionized industries across India. People knew Ratan Tata's heart as much as they knew his name. In every action, Tata demonstrated kindness and generosity that touched countless lives. Joining me today to honor his legacy is Mr. Jayant Krishna. Mr. Krishna made significant contribution to India's skill development and technology sectors over an extremely distinguished career which spans 38 long years. He served as the CEO of the National Skill Development Corporation, leading key initiatives under the Prime Minister's Skill India mission. Mr. Jayant Krishna, thank you so much for joining us today.
A pleasure.
Mr. Krishna, we all know since morning we've been hearing about the great legacy of Ratan Tata, the way he, his contribution, immense contribution. It's very difficult really, because here is a giant who stands in front of us, whether it is India's first indigenously produced cars. But considering, Jayant Krishna, that you have worked very closely with him, as regional director of TCS, I want you today to take us through certain anecdotes, the meetings that you may have with Ratan Tata. What happened? How were you moved so that this nation also gets inspired? Mr. Jayant Krishna.
Yeah. So thanks, Sudha, for having me. And basically, I worked, with him. I interacted with him more when I was outside of Tata Group than when I was within the Tata Group. Actually, in the year 2015, Tata's had deputed me to be the CEO of National Skill Development Corporation, looking at the importance of the skill development as a sector for the country. And I was so I think at that time, when I met him, he was first of all very happy to know, and he had some lots of pearls of wisdom to share with me. And later, a couple of years down the line, when I again met
Jayant
him,
Krishna, Mr. Jayant Krishna, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there you can see the 21 gun salute, which has been given to Ratan Tata. As I said, the Maharashtra government, Eknath Shinde, Chief Minister, said that he shall be honored with a state funeral. There, those shots, and that's why I stopped speaking with Sri Jayant Krishna, because this is a very poignant moment, a moment when we bid our final goodbyes to a legend called Ratan Tata. Yeah, Mr. Jayant Krishna, please go ahead. What were you saying? So I'm sorry to interject, because that was a tribute being given to him. Go ahead, Mr.
absolutely.
Krishna.
Absolutely. So, when the Tatas deputed me to work for the government, looking at the criticality of skill development as a sector for the country, then I remember he was very happy, and I said, "Sir, what's I need your blessings, and what's your message?" He says, "Always keep the country first." I think that's very, very important. And that is also reflected in the Tata Code of Conduct, where it says that if you are ever in conflict between the country and the country's priorities and the business priorities of the company that you represent, the country comes first and foremost. So the same message he gave me, and later after spending some time with the government, when I met him, his almost like a childlike enthusiasm, he asked me. So, from whatever I know, he said it appears to be the skill development appears to be a sector which is more driven by supply. How do you transform this? How is government thinking to transform that from a supply-driven system to a demand-driven, where there's more industry demand which gets accumulated, and then you train people. And then I tried to answer, not that I had all the answers at that point of time. And after that, he also said, what are the first generation, second generation reforms, which are important for the country to create jobs and create employment, trigger job growth. And I tried to answer, I had some solutions, not
Right.
all, but he had the childlike enthusiasm, and also in the same breath, he reflected some kind of a catholicity of a researcher, which he wanted. But deep within was the spirit of the nationhood and thinking about the country. I think that's very, very important. He was very different from, let's say, JRD, from whom he inherited, the leadership of
Right.
the Tata Group. But he at least he continued while there was a very from a business perspective there were changes, but from a philanthropy perspective, the same spirit continues from
Right.
Jamshedji
Yeah.
Tata's
I
time
want
to
you, yeah,
Jayant's time to
sure.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jayant Krishna, sir, I also want you to tell me about the man. Apparently, he will make his point, but he was extremely polite, soft spoken. He would wait and listen to what you had to say. And then, this is what I have been reading. You're a man who met this legend in person. What about the person that he was? Apparently, he would always give way to the visitor first. Someone wrote today that I drove to see him in a Mercedes. He drove away in an Indica. Look at that guy. Look at this person. Sir, tell us about the man that he was, Jayant Krishna, sir.
I'll just tell you about an incident.
Yeah.
This was in one of the hotels in Bombay. And I don't remember the year, but they were early years after he took over as the group chairman in the year 1991. This must have been 94, 95, 96 kind of a time frame. And, they were all in, I don't even remember whether it was an industry awards function or whatever it is. A lot of corporate bigwigs, they were there.
Right.
Almost all business leaders were there, and the audience. I was sitting in the audience, and I would say, XYZ would come, people would notice, and keep sitting, and keep waiting for others to
Right.
come. But the moment Mr. And everybody was coming, a couple of them came with security guards, other people came surrounded by their managers, and so on and so forth. Here, Mr. Ratan Tata walks in all alone, and believe me, in that capacity of that hall was about 700, 800 odd people, and everybody stood in respect, to respect the man. So that is what he was, a man of very few words, but the kind of humility he reflected in his life was second to none. I remember once the first time I went to Tata Sons, the Bombay House, which is the
Yeah,
group
of course.
headquarters, and I expected that, like most corporate headquarters, it will have a lot of opulence, a lot of sophistication. But to my surprise, I found none of that. And I found, in fact, street dogs, stray dogs, loitering around in the reception area and in the
How
corridors.
wonderful. Yeah.
And I didn't know at that time that he had that kind of a love for animals and dogs and so on and so forth. In a short while, I see Mr. Tata walking in and cajoling some of those street dogs, and those dogs were actually fed, at Tata Sons by Tata Sons. So I think, coming to the minimalism, his he could have afforded to live in one of the poshest houses in Bombay or wherever, whichever part of the world he wanted to. But he lived in a very simple house. So one value which I picked up from Mr. Tata was that austerity is not something that we need to be ashamed of. It is a very cherished value which we should keep very close to our heart. And like a tall tree, the taller it goes, the more it bends and out of humility. So I think my only worry is with him having gone, and there are very few leaders today left in the country, which which have such a huge such a legacy of philanthropy, with generosity, with humility and righteousness, ethics. I mean, the Tata Code of Conduct tells you about corporate ethics, about business ethics, ethics as a human being. And believe me, Sudha, it's not just something written in a letter. It becomes, you imbibe this as a spirit, and it becomes a part of your DNA. And perhaps that's the reason why I took. I left Tata Group at initially being deputed by them to work for the government, and then left, and having joined the government, then worked for other think tanks and worked for various non-profits on sectors which were very, very key for the country. So I think that basic ethos, I'm sure, would have flowed from what I learned in the Tata Group, and observed those traits in Mr. Ratan Tata. So I
Right.
think it's a very, very rare human being he was, Sudha.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also told that you spoke about Bombay House and stray dogs there, and he was such a dog lover. His dogs, apparently, one would fetch his newspaper in the morning. You ring the bell, and the dog would come. He had no major servants, just a retainer. I want to ask you one last question before I let you go, Mr. Jayant Krishna. Apparently, in Bombay House, whenever he was there, no one was expected to stand in a corner or salute him. He would be there like any other employee. Is that right, Mr. Jayant Krishna?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there
Wow.
was I can't explain his humility to you. I mean, he'll go to an airline and stand in the queue. Very often he'll drive his own car. I think, I mean, in Bombay House, there was nothing. He'll walk alone. He'll use the elevator alone. So I think everything, about that man was humility, and which is actually true for the Tata Group as well. It was true for JRD as well, and now Chandra reflects the same values. So I think there's a lot the business world needs to learn from him, emulate. From him, he was easily a legend. The types of which you do not find in today's business world.
Mr. Jayant Krishna, thank you so much for joining us today. Today being a special day, and I think we are celebrating Ratan Tata. There is mourning, but then we are celebrating son of the soil, one of the most precious sons that India has produced. And Mr. Jayant Krishna, you brought out that aspect of this great son of India. Thank you very much for joining us on this broadcast. Thank you, sir.